How can we protect our children from the negative influences of the culture? That's the topic that we're going to be addressing today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager, and today I have a very prestigious and special guest from across the pond, so to speak. Her name is Pastor Jo Naughton, and she is the founder of Whole Heart Ministries. She's also been a leader in one of the charities that was headed up and founded by King Charles, in fact, and she left that to do her own ministry. And she now does plenty of communications and ministry in a lot of spaces, including serving as a prolific author and speaker. And she's here to share with us certain ways that we can protect our children so that our families can thrive. Thank you for coming on the show today, Jo. I am delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
So tell us what tugged at your heart to focus on ministering to families and children.
Absolutely. Well, I've been ministering to adults and teenagers a little bit for the last 30 years. And Whole Heart Ministries, what we've been doing in terms of ministering has again been focused on adults mainly. And that all changed about a year ago. So a little bit of background to put it in context. We exist really to help people heal of the hidden hurts that they didn't even realize are holding them back. And so often we discover that we need healing by realizing, you know what, I get insecure. I worry what people think. I wake up feeling weighed down in the morning. So all of these are just symptoms that show that we're carrying heart wounds. So we've been ministering to adults in all sorts of different ways for many, many years. Last July, I was in my prayer closet and I heard God speak to me in a way I have never heard him before. It was like his voice reverberated around my heart. And he said these words, "Heal my children." And with those words just came so much of God's heart. And I just started to cry and cry as he revealed all the inevitable hurts that children go through, from family friction at home, fights, bullying at school, mean words, feeling left out, and then, of course, losing a family member, whether that's through separation or people dying. And God started to show me that all the inevitable hurts that children go through, and this is what he said. He said those hurts have made children targets for the enemy. And he said, heal my children so that they can be strong and secure and withstand everything that comes at them. And it all made so much sense, because so much of the work that we do with adults, where they feel like they're not enough, where they feel small, where they compare themselves with other people, most of the wounds that we're ministering to in adults, or a lot of it, came in while they were children. Things said, done, trauma at home, rejection, abandonment, just difficult stuff that almost everyone goes through. And it's those wounds that make a person feel small, feel like they're not enough, doubt themselves. And so suddenly I'm seeing, oh my goodness, wow, Lord, yes, if we can heal a child the day or around the time when they come home from school, feeling battered by things that other children said, not really meaning to be that cruel, but just because stuff happens. If a child can get hurt in the moment, at the time, then they're actually going to know, do you know what? No one's better than me. I'm smart. I'm enough. And so when the temptations come to kind of, to comply with peer pressure, to do what other children say they're supposed to do, to even just bow down to kind of the expectations of society. If they know, do you know what? I'm allowed to stand up for what I believe and I'm already enough, then they won't have to bow to all that stuff out there.
That really touches my heart. As a therapist, what you're saying is so on point, so true, and so very needed. It almost brings tears to my eyes as well, to be perfectly honest. That is just such a meaningful ministry. Thank you for standing in the gap for the most vulnerable among us in the world today. What part of those wounds comes from the attacks, like you're saying, through our culture from the enemy?
What the enemy's always looking for is the weakest link. And it's the weakest link in each one of us, not just the weakest link generally. If we look at the journey that the children of Israel took from Egypt into the promised land, the Bible says that the Amalekites, which was one of the most constant enemies that Israel fought against, the Amalekites would always target the stragglers, the people at the back, the people who were not in the core. And this is what the enemy does. He will send messages. And so in today's society, the messages that he's sending is, if you really want to be loved, if you want to be liked, if you want to be popular, then these are the things that you need to do. And there are so many ways that the enemy's been attacking, certainly against people's self-worth. If you want to be liked, if you want to be loved, then you need to blend in. You can't stand out. You can't be different. And let's face it, standing up and saying, I believe in Jesus, in many sections, even in America, I mean, in the UK, we are a minority, big time. But in America, there are lots of parts of the nation where if you stand up and say, I'm good enough just the way I am, then you're going to be challenged for that. And so the ways that the enemy tries to target a child is by telling them, let's pick gender. God said in Genesis 1:27, he said that he made us in the image of God, in his likeness, male and female. And what society says to a child, to a teenager, is if you feel like you don't fit in, if you feel like you don't quite know who you are, maybe it's because you're not actually the gender that you were born into. And there are all these different messages come to a child that are, if you feel like you're not enough, you might need to change, rather than actually, you're great just the way you are. But what you might need is just to be healed on the inside of some of the things that have been said to you that made you feel like you weren't enough.
I'm kind of hearing a pattern where the enemy is attacking through these messages that have become popularized in culture. The attack is against the basic needs in each stage of a child's development. So, acceptance and belonging, identity, gender identity, sexuality, development of your unique sense of worth and place, your gifts, your talents, how to apply those. All of those things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. And I want to start where you started, which is in acceptance. And this is the thing. I'm going to mention another scripture. So God's plan for a child, his plan for every single one of us, was that we would be born into a family where we would experience love and acceptance, and that we would know that we are enough just for being who we are. And so that was God's plan. But in life, there are hurts, there are wounds. People say things and do things that make a child feel upset, feel afraid, feel nervous. And it says in Proverbs 23 and verse 7, it says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. In other words, it's not what we think in our head, it's what we think in our heart. We think at two levels, in our minds and in our hearts. Now, if, for example, a child was in a situation where everyone's shouting, yelling, doors are slamming and they're scared, well, in that moment, that little one will think in their heart. Now, that word think is a Hebrew word that means to evaluate, to assess. So suddenly you've got a little child in this really scary setting, things being said and done, and they're making an evaluation of their worth. Well, everyone's being mean, so I mustn't be very nice. People are being cruel. They're pushing me about. They're saying and doing things. So I'm obviously not as good as other people. As a man thinks in his heart, or as a child thinks in their heart, so are they. So suddenly they're making these assessments based on the way that they're treated. And suddenly they think, I'm not accepted. I'm not enough. I'm not loved. And that settles as a belief deep on the inside. For years, Tina, I tried to convince myself that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. I tried to convince myself that I was lovely, that I was beautiful before God, but I just never believed it until God healed me of the reasons why I felt like a reject. Until he healed me of the experiences I went through as a little girl that made me feel like everyone else was better than I was. And once I got healed, suddenly it became easy to believe that, oh my goodness, I'm made in the image of God. That was a very long answer to your question.
Well, we're getting to a midpoint here, and I want to get into more about these solutions and the ways that we can target healing kids right at the core of when they are attacked in their identity, in their self-worth, in all of the places and belonging and what their unique purpose is, all of the things that they need developmentally. If we target those with biblical truth, then we can begin to heal them early so they don't end up having these issues as they grow and continue to ache, and layer upon layer of trauma and dysfunction happens over time. If you would just list for a moment all the places where people can find your resources to get more information. We are going to do a second half of this and talk more, but for now, would you like to give your links on how they can get your books, how they can talk to you about the Whole Heart Ministries, and all of the things that you have to offer?
Absolutely, thank you. So all of our books, including a children's book, a book for parents, are available at our website, jonaughton.com, spelt very weirdly. So that's JONAUGHTON.com, jonaughton.com. And there you can find out about the Heart Academy, where we run 5-week Zoom courses on different issues of the heart. We have one coming up called How to Raise Secure Children. We have them coming up about insecurity, rejection, fear. That's the Heart Academy. We have information about my mentoring network there and all our different events and conferences. So that's at jonaughton.com.
I hope that all of you listening were informed and inspired so that you're equipped to make a difference in the lives of the children that are around you, in your home and in your community. And of course, I also hope that you will come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant.